Okay, again, this is Yvonne Keller, and I'm here to share my story with you. And let me just bring you up to date in case you haven't seen the previous videos that I've recorded in reference to this story. Um, so right now, um, I've filed a claim of exploitation with Adult Protective Services. Um, I was scheduled to meet with the investigator, whom did not show up. Instead, she met with my sister, whom I had given the phone number to, and she was supposed to have been calling to schedule a family meeting so all of us could meet together. And she met with my sister instead the following day, which was on a Monday, June the 11th, and she erroneously had my mother removed out of her house with the help of the Prince George's County Police Department, um, a DPI inspector, code enforcement inspector, Ronald Waters, and another social services, child protective services worker whose name I can't recall. Okay, so where I was at was by now my mother is in my sister's possessions. I had filed a stay away order against my brother-in-law for threatening to kill me. Um, my sister filed a bogus stay away order against me in retaliation for me filing one on her husband. And the next thing we did was we went to court. So I think I told you we went to court and they didn't bring my mother to court. So the judge in Hydesville was asking, well, my mother's name was on the order and she wasn't there. So since she wasn't there, she dismissed the case because even though I explained, Your Honor, they're holding my mother in isolation. They didn't bring her to court. They know that she should have came. The judge was just like, well, if she's not here, we don't have a case. So that was the end of my case. But then I had to go to court in Glen Burnie on this charge this bogus charge that my sister put on me. So I go to the Glen Burnie courthouse, me and a couple of friends, and I see my sister and her husband. They come to court. Now, they didn't have my mother with them, but they said I had abused her, okay? So, I mean, even if a child said that they was abused, that child is ordered to come to court and has to testify, which I never thought was cool, but that's just the way the law is. So, how she could come in court and say something about my mother, and at the time, she did not have guardianship of my mother. No one had guardianship. She just had my mother in her possession. So we get to the courthouse with Judge Spencer. Now, mind you, my sister's position in the Department of Corrections was dealing with the inmates and taking them to court and maybe like ordering them to go to rehab or treatment, or she kind of like called the shots for the inmates in the courtroom along with the judges. So she was in court just about every day. So she pretty much knew most of the judges at that courthouse in Glen Burnie. Okay. Anyway, we get in the courtroom and I tried to explain to the judge that she's lying, I've never abused my mother. And where is my mother? My mother would tell you that I've never abused her. She always said how good I treat her. So this judge, oh, and also my sister had a letter. My girlfriend Paulette, she's deceased now, God rest her soul. Paulette, she had this letter that she claimed that Paulette had written, and she read it and said that Paulette said that she was in fear for my sister's life because she said that I had called and threatened of what I was going to do to her, which was a lie. But like I told the judge, Your Honor, that's hearsay, because if she could have wrote a letter, she could have came here and said what she had to say. So the judge said, well, I'm not going to take that letter in consideration, but I am going to go ahead and grant her the stay away order. I said, on what grounds? What grounds? He said, well, because y'all fighting over your mother right now, so I'm just going to let the order go until the end of October. When did y'all go to court? I said, we go to court October the 2nd. October the 2nd. He said, well, I'm just going to let this order go until the end of October. Okay, so the order was good until October the 31st. Okay. And I was like, that's crazy. So I appealed it. I appealed it immediately. And then when we went for the appeal, we had to get a sitting judge because the original judge had went over in his cases. And when we went for my appeal, they got my sister Thelma and Curleen. Now they had joined together and had my brother and my sister-in-law. When they come to court, they always bring all the family members. My sister would tell all the family members that they had to be in court. Even when I was there with my brother-in-law for the stillborn. I had my brother here from Georgia. I had my brother here from Norfolk. I had my brother Carl, his wife, my sister Thelma, her husband Saul. I mean, it was just like a whole group of people on one side of the court against me. And I was like, really? Anyway, so when we went to court for the other trial, my appeal, they were all there. And my sister got up there and they told a bunch of lies or talked about something that had happened years ago, and I'm like, really? So anyway, the judge ended up asking me, would I consent? And I was like, no, I mean, why should I consent when it's not true, But I was there for an appeal, but they ended up letting it be a violation hearing because they had filed a violation against me also, which was scheduled to take place in Prince George's County, but we hadn't gotten to that date yet. So they took my appeal case and turned it to a violation case and got up there telling their lies that I did this and I did that. And I'm like, really? And the judge, for some reason, believed them over me. And he told me either I can consent or, he was going to make a ruling. So me not knowing that I should not have consented, because then that takes my right to appeal away, I consented unknowing that, I wouldn't have the right to appeal it again. So that kind of like just got stuck with that, okay? So there was a blemish on my record, okay, caused by my sister, okay? So now my mother is staying with my sister, and they're not allowing me to see her. Now, let me just go back. One day after I talked to the lady, I told you I went over and I talked to the acting supervisor, Miss Peterson, and she called my sister and she said, oh, you have to let her see her mother. So she said, well, I'll let her see her. She could meet me at the public library. And anyway, so I was like, at the library, she could bring my mother past here, or either I can come out to her house. I mean, I don't have to see my mother at the library. I usually like to cook meals with my mother and sit back and, dine and eat and laugh and enjoy my mother. But she said only at the library. So I did meet my mother at the library, and I did post some pictures of us at the library on my Facebook page. And I met my mother at the library. Now, while I was at the library, my girlfriend was there with me, and my sister, my two sisters, and my cousin. Joyce was in the car. They just went and picked my mother up from Norfolk from visiting with my brother. I think that was like on July the 22nd, okay? So I just went on and agreed to see my mother, because I hadn't seen my mother since June the 11th. So on July the 22nd, I said, okay, well, I'll meet her in the library, because my mother had been calling me. My mother, she gets on her cell phone and she knows my number. My mother had been calling me the whole time, asking me, is my house ready? Did you get somebody to fix the house yet? Is my house ready for me? Can I come back? I'm ready to come back home now. Is my house ready? And I was trying to explain that Curleen wasn't giving up the money to get whatever needed to be done. But all at the same time, I didn't know exactly what had to be done as far as why our house was condemned, because there was no paperwork. Okay, usually you have some type of paperwork that you have to do this, you have to do that, you have to repair this, you have to repair that. There was no inspection report. So I didn't know exactly what had to be done. And I know my mother was calling me, and she was constantly asking me, well, did the people fix the house yet? Is my house ready yet? Can I come? I'm ready to come home now, And so I had contacted some contractors, and I had got a couple of estimates. I think the highest estimate was like $3,900. And I went on and got an estimate for I guess to have the wall, because the houses and the wall, the basement walls, the concrete walls in the houses in that neighborhood, mostly every one of them have cracks in them because the houses are getting old and concrete cracks. And so I thought, well, maybe I would just have someone come and dig out around the house and repair the cracks in the basement wall. I didn't know exactly what they were saying needed to be done because I had already did the whole basement. I put new floor in the basement. I painted the whole basement. I had the wall repaired where the mold was on the back side of the paneling. I had that taken out, and I didn't know exactly what had to be done. I even went as far as, going on Facebook and putting a GoFundMe page out there to get my mother's home repaired. And I knew that with that wall that I had repaired, where the mold was at initially, I noticed a spot had came back on that wall because we had a whole lot of rain that May. And I believe it was in last year in May. We had a whole lot of rain. And I think the rain, because I didn't get the gutters on the outside of the house fixed, like where the downspout is, instead of the water going away from the house, the water was just dropping right alongside of the house. And so I had one of the contractors, he told me that I had to get that water to go away from the house because it was collecting right along the wall of the house, which allowed it to reach a level to come through the cracks that was in the wall. So that was the problem. So I went on and I did a GoFundMe page with some friends, and I really appreciate those of you who, cared enough to help me out or to attempt to help me, until my sister rudely interrupted that and sent everyone a notice telling them not to support it, that I had stole from my mother and all these lies. But I do appreciate those of you who helped, and the money that I did receive. I did go out and I did get the gutters fixed, and I did what I could do as in reference to what I thought had to be done because I wasn't sure of what had to be done. So my mother is at my sister's. I'm steadily fighting, trying to see what I could do to get the house prepared because she keeps telling me she wants to come home. And time is just steadily going on. Now, while I was dealing with this, we did have that family meeting over at the Adult Protective Services office too. I forgot to tell you that. We ended up having that meeting, I guess about a week after the woman took my mother out of the house and gave her to my sister. But when they came to the meeting, I made the woman promise me that my mother would be there. But when they came to the meeting, my mother was not there. My sister left my mother at her house with this babysitter or whoever this chick was, Debbie. I guess she was paying people to stay with my mother. I don't know. She had access to the money, so a lot of things changed when she lost that money. But when we had this family meeting, it was like we came to the table and I was like, well, my mother's supposed to be here. Oh, well, she's not here. There's no reason why she shouldn't be here. I mean, why? Oh, they just kind of like overlooked it. And then she went around the table talking to my brothers and sisters. And, oh, well, I think my mother should live with Curleen because, I'm tired of people fussing and cussing at her and asking her for money. I'm looking at my sister like, who does that? Anyway, and then another, I'm people stealing from my mother, so I think the best thing is my mother just go live with Curleen. And then my other brother, well, I think my mother should live with Curleen. Everybody's saying what they think my mother should do, but the most important person, who is my mother, her voice was never heard. What did she want to do? Did it even matter to anyone other than me? No. Not even to the Adult Protective Services worker. Okay? Now, my mother, you should have heard what my mother had to say. And then you should have made it convenient for her to have what she wanted, not what they wanted. Because, see, my brothers and sisters' whole issue was now because my sister told them that I had stole this $500 from my mother, and and she done turned everybody against me. Okay, so now it's them thinking it's me who want money, when in reality the person who wanted the money was manipulating them, and they were too dumb to realize that they were being manipulated. Okay, everybody knows my character. Yeah, I might be a little rough around the edges, but my heart is of gold. I'll give you the shirt off my back. My sisters and brothers always would say how I'm just like my mother. But then they always would say too, Vaughn, he'll curse you out one minute and then take you in the house and feed you and everything else the next minute. Okay, so, my heart is right and my conscience is clear. Okay, and how I feel about my mother, and the reason why I am fighting this fight and I'm not giving up, because it's not about me. It's not about my brothers and my sisters. It's about my mother's. And again, like I said, she was never in the meeting, so her voice was never heard, okay? But I had had many conversations with my mother over the years. Even me and my sister Tit, we used to sit and have conversations with my mother when she got elderly, what we were to do. So I know what was to be done, okay? It was no doubt in my mind what my mother wanted, okay? Whether if she has a little mild dementia or not, she is very of sound mind, and she was of really sound mind, and she told me exactly what she wanted done and how she wanted things to be. And it was my goal to make sure that her wishes are respected. That's all I'm fighting for, okay? Anyway, so my sister has my mother, and like I said, I'm not getting to see my mother after that one visit in the library. Oh, wait a minute. While we was in the library, like me and my girlfriend, Robin, we was there. Robin, I got to give Robin Crumlin and David Crenshaw, I'm giving them the utmost respect and love because they stuck with me through this whole ordeal, okay? And me and Robin went to the library, and I met with my mother, and my sister and my girlfriend, Robin, they got in a little argument because they wouldn't let me have no private time with my mother. They was like afraid that they wanted to hear everything we were talking about. So at one point in time in the library, when Robin and my sister Thelma, and they was having words with each other back and forth, and Curleen got involved, I took my mother and I walked over to the library desk with her. And I said, Ma, I need you to tell me, and I need you to tell me the truth. I said, did you give Curleen or anyone power of attorney? She said, no, I ain't gave nobody no power of attorney. I said, well, would you be willing to put that in writing? Because I need that in writing if that's what you're saying is true. So the young lady at the desk, she gave me a pencil and a pen and a piece of paper. And my mother wrote down, and I had that. She wrote down, I, Maisie Keller Phillips, do not have a power of attorney. And she signed it, she dated, and I had the young lady to witness it and sign it, and I signed it. Okay? And that is what I had to use as documentation from my mother, stating that she has never given anyone power of attorney, and I had it witnessed and signed by someone who we did not even know, but she was an employee at the library, okay? Now, my sisters didn't know that I got this from my mother because they was over on the other side of the library arguing with my girlfriend. Anyway, we left the library, and my mother went on with my sister. I had to give her my love and my hugs and my kisses, and I had to watch my mother leave and go with them, these people who she never was around too much. She didn't visit their homes. My mother visited my house just about every day. I have girlfriends who would tell you, Vaughn, even we used to, everything. One thing I can say is we could never go out and hang out and party unless you went over and took care of your mother first. That's right. That's what I do. And that's how I feel about her. I took care of my mother and her husband when he was living. Yeah, I fed them meals every day. I took food to them every day. And days that I didn't take food to them, they was at my house eating and being cared for. Okay? Anyway, so by now, My sister gets my mother, and they go on, and I'm steadily trying to fight this case with these people, like trying to figure out what's going on. I mean, I'm not understanding what's going on. So I did the GoFundMe page. I done went over to the house. I done cleaned out the whole. Like, my daughter had left her children's stuff because she was under the impression, well, the house is condemned, and they said the house is molded. So I don't want none of my stuff. I said, girl, you better get your stuff. All this time you've been living in there. Ain't nothing happened to nobody. Ain't nothing wrong with that house. Anyway, so everybody who had left their things, because they was forced out, I went over to the house, and I called bulky trash, and I cleaned out the whole basement again because I had already prepared it for. I was planning on moving in with my mother when when the time became necessary. The time wasn't necessary. I was just prepared for her older age because I realized she is getting older. So I went and I cleaned out the whole basement. I scrubbed the floors. I threw out all the stuff that was left by people who had previously lived there. My girlfriend took and bleached and wiped down the upstairs, the walls. Well, the walls were fairly new, but the doors, and I went in the kitchen because the electric was off, and the electric was off when I first went there, and the refrigerators had food and stuff in it, and it was stinking bad. So I took and I cleaned out both refrigerators and both freezers. You could go there now. They're still cleaned out, bleached out, and clean. I cleaned up. I made sure the kitchen, I made sure everything was spick and span clean because I want my mother to come home. And it's like I said, it was nothing wrong with the house anyway, but I just went and I just made sure everything was spotless. Okay. And my girlfriend, she helped me. And I didn't get to take pictures because my phone had died and the electric was off. Okay. So I left out and I called my mom and I said, Ma, your house is spick and span clean. It's ready for you to come home. Like, I had fixed the little gutters on the back and on the front. I found the front gutter was broke and the water was dripping. That's why the water was running into the basement, which is why my mother thinks that her house was condemned, because she said, oh, they put me out because they said water was coming in the basement. Water probably coming in a whole lot of houses around their basement. That don't mean your house condemned, and that don't mean you have to get out of your house. I mean, come on, we had the wet vac and we've been cleaning that water up for I don't know how long. It ain't hurting nobody, it only happened when it rained. Anyway, so I fixed the gutter there so that water could stop overflowing and running down in that basement right there off the front porch. And I did everything that I could do, and I had the house nice and spick and span clean. I would go there just about every day and collect the mail, because everybody in the world didn't live with my mother. And a lot of people mail is still going to my mother's house. So, I did this, and I had a big bag of mail for everybody. And finally, our court date came up, and my sister had filed for guardianship of my mother. Okay. And this lady, Miss Bagali, in the very beginning, when everything had first started, she was telling me, oh, why don't you go file for guardianship? Now, she told my sister, she didn't put my mother in my sister's hand and told my sister to file for guardianship. And then I guess she thought she was being, I don't know, telling me to go file for guardianship too. Okay. But you already told my sister to do it. Okay. And I'm telling her, I don't want to file for guardianship over my mother because my mother is not incompetent. And in order to file guardianship, a person has to be incompetent. Okay. So she said, well, you should go file guardianship. Come to find out, my sister filed guardianship of my mother. Okay. She filed it in the court and I contested it. And when I got a copy of the guardianship application that my sister had applied for guardianship of my mother, I really didn't pay too much attention to it because I basically just knew the questions was on it because I had an application too, which I didn't file, but I contested her guardianship. Okay. We finally went to court, and I didn't have an attorney to help me with the contestant of the guardianship, and with all that had been going on. And I really didn't understand all that was going on, why the social services people was like brushing my case under the rug, like ignoring me. And I really didn't understand what was going on. So what I did was I started to do a little investigation of my own. Okay. But before I jump I know I'm all over the place, and forgive me for that, you guys, but I'm trying to just give you the whole story. Okay. So when we went to court the first time, all of my brothers and sisters was here, and they were on one side. And then I noticed my nephew, he came in the courtroom, and he said, Aunt Vonnie, I ain't on nobody's side. I ain't in it. I'm like, excuse me? What you mean you ain't on nobody's side? You better be on your grandmother's side, because you the one who are homeless and don't have anywhere to live. You're running from pillar to post, staying wherever you can stay because you don't have anywhere to go. And here they are trying. Now she done manipulated you to think that you're not on nobody's side when she got you homeless, and you're sitting here saying you ain't on you better be on your grandmother's side. I don't need you to be on my side. You need to be trying to get back in your home where you live. Okay? So, the first court date we had, the judge, I got an extension. They didn't want me to get an extension because I had just gotten a free attorney who was going to help me with the case. But they ended up not helping me, even though I did get the extension, because the case was too complicated. It was too much here and too much there. It was like nobody wanted to touch it. And I'm still having a hard time trying to get some legal help, okay? So I'm basically doing everything on my own. And I'm doing it against people who are well-versed in dealing with situations like this, okay? So I got the extension. So the first extension, when we went in with Judge Engel, and we had to go see the administrative judge, and my sister said, well, she didn't want an extension because next month she was going to have a funeral to go to. So the judge was like, well, how you got a funeral planned for next month? You know, that's how much she lied, okay? And if you don't believe me, pull the court record and listen to it. And that was in the administrative judge's court, okay? So the judge said, well, I'm going to go ahead and grant Miss Keller an extension. And I'll see you guys on November the 5th, okay? So we went back in the courtroom with Judge Engel, and she gave my sister temporary guardianship of my mother. And she also informed us that she was taking my mother's money and property, and she was going to put that in a state-appointed attorney's custody, okay? And that attorney her name was Sharon Kelsey, okay? So we didn't know who she was going to be at the time we left the court that day, but we were told that this attorney was going to have the power over my mother's, temporary power over my mother's home and my mother's money, her property and her money. Okay? When we leave the courtroom, okay, and I come home, and my girlfriend, because she lives in the area, she said, Vonnie, she called me. She said, all your brothers and sisters is at your mother's house congregating. I said, really? I wonder what's that all about, because nobody had really been there but me and her, and we just went over there and prepared the house for my mother to come home, okay? So when my brother came over, I asked my brother, Erskine, who lives in Georgia, I said, Erky, I haven't seen Mama. I said, they didn't even bring her to court that day, okay? I said, Erky, could you bring Mama to see me, because she wants to see me and I want to see her. So my brother said, okay. He said, I'll bring her over to your house Saturday, which was the next day. So I said, okay. So when Saturday came and my brother came over, him and my brother Carl. Now, me and Carl used to be best of friends. I mean, I was there for him when he wasn't working, when he wasn't getting paid. I would go to his house, pitch horseshoes with him. We had little drinks, and we was like best of friends, okay? And I don't know what happened